Welcome, everybody. Today we have the team from Pharmacolog back. Welcome, Steve, Territory Manager, and Jeff, Director of Sales. About a year ago, I interviewed them regarding their product, Wastelog, and I've invited them back to do a demo of Wastelog for us, which is what they're going to be doing. But before we jump into that demo, maybe you could start by just giving us a nice overview of how the equipment is best used within a facility. For example, is it meant to be used by the end user on the floor or by the pharmacy? How do you recommend and what do you see as the best process? Just kind of give us that overview.
Very good question, Terry. The way our software is designed with the latest version, the system can be utilized in various different ways. It can be used by the end user. So if you do have the provider that you do want to perform the assay, it can be set up that way where it does not provide them the result. The result would just be viewed by folks in the pharmacy. It can also be set up for use by pharmacy. So pharmacy does all the assay testing. Now, whether they do that testing down in the procedure area or in the pharmacy or any designated area that they deem, the system is mobile. So they can really perform the test and do the test as randomly as they want and wherever they want.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Let's jump into the demo.
All right, great. Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Steve. So we're going to go ahead and show you how the Wastelog software works, and I'll go ahead and get started. So that this is the sign-on screen. So on the left-hand side, you have the username. In this case, there's my name, and then the user would have a 4-digit to 6-digit sign-in code, which we would set them up with. And then you punch the code in, and then when you punch the code in, it'll bring you to a reference measurement screen. And basically, we ask that a reference measurement be done every 24 hours. It's basically a reference measurement of saline, so 0.3 to 0.5 mLs that goes into a cuvette. You hit the measure reference, and really this is all to just basically zero out the variations of the system. This is done once a day, and once it's done, you don't have to do it anymore. So after that, we move to the screen where we have the medications that you want to test for. This is our drug library. So in this case, let's test fentanyl, and let's say we're looking for fentanyl 10. So in this case, you can actually either put 10 in there, or you can take your finger and you can slide it up and down to the strength that you want to test for. The machine can go by touch, so you can put your finger there, and then you just enter the concentration you want to test for, and then you hit next. So if we're going to test for fentanyl 10, it'll bring you to this screen here, which is your preparation ID field. So in this field, it's all the pertinent information that goes in the preparation ID. So the name of the drug, the date, anything can go in this field. If you have a barcode, you can actually scan the barcode, and the information off the barcode would go into the preparation ID field, which would save a few steps from actually doing the manual entry. Then we have a remaining volume field. So this is the remaining volume. So let's say we have 0.5 mLs that's left in the syringe. And then finally, the provider ID field, where you can put the provider information in, which in this case would be John Smith. You hit next, and then you draw 0.3 to 0.5 mLs from the syringe or the bag. It goes into a cuvette. You put it into the system, and then you hit measure sample. And then within 2 to 3 seconds, this is what's going on. This is the Wastelog technology at work. So this is the UV visible light absorption spectroscopy. You have a powerful light that's shooting through the sample. It's working with the spectrometer, and then it's creating that software analysis, which is your pass or your fail. So it's done in 2 to 3 seconds. It's very, very, very quick. So if we look to the left, we were testing for fentanyl 10. And if we look to the right, we got a pass. So we expected fentanyl 10. We measured at fentanyl 10.254, and we have a deviation of 2.5%. This is a good test, so it's a pass measurement. We would hit next. And then this is the field where you can put comments in. Obviously, this is a passed measurement. So the comments would be passed, and then you would hit submit. So this is actually a failed measurement. So we're going to look at a couple different scenarios here. We're expecting fentanyl 10, just like before. We got a fail, which is a concentration of 49.9 and a deviation of negative 49.5%. So let's take a look at the graph and find out why it failed. So it identified fentanyl, which is good, but again, it came up half of that, so it failed. It also will search for any medication in the calibration library. So it'll look for fentanyl first, but it will also go through the library to see if it found any other medication. If it would have been saline, it would have said identified saline, should have been fentanyl. If you look at the graph, you can see the concentration levels here. These are all the concentrations of fentanyl 5, 10, 49.9, 50. And basically what this is a wavelength graph. And you can kind of see that the sample line, which is green in here, it kind of follows these concentrations of the fentanyl 10 here. So there's 3 different areas that you're looking at. You're looking at the area here, you're looking at the area here, and then you're looking at the area here. So being that this is a failed sample, we would classify it. We have a classification of green, yellow, and red. This would be a red classification because it's a fail. You have the opportunity to put comments in. Actually, you would need to put comments in. So at this point, we would put sample measured at 5 mcg per ml. Further investigation is needed. And then you would hit submit, and then you can actually cap the cuvette and save it if you want to send it in for further testing. In this case, this is an error basically based on concentration, which could be a mixture issue, not technically a diversion issue. So why Wastelog? Wastelog is a vital component of diversion prevention programs. It's quick, reliable, easy to use, and affordable. It's a portable device. It's easy to move between OR, ICU, pharmacy, or facilities. There's no limit to the number of tests performed per month, so there's no subscription. The new calibrations can be added to the drug library on site by you under 3 minutes, so it's very quick. You get immediate results and graphical curves for more in-depth analysis. Share data with any existing diversion analytics already in place. It uses cuvettes, so it preserves a sample for further testing. It's got the latest UV-Vis spectroscopy technology. It has the ability to identify low concentrations of fentanyl and pediatric dosing, which is huge. It's integrated with the barcode label systems like SLS from Codonics for improved workflow. That's where we talked about the preparation ID field in a couple slides back, where you can scan the barcode and all that information would populate into the preparation ID field. All that information gets saved. It is cloud-based or local storage of calibrations and measurement data, and the Wastelog can be used as a standalone or networked. Now, what comes with the Wastelog is we have the Pharmacolog dashboard, and basically this is Pharmacolog's data analytic tool, and the customer has access to this 24/7. So they from this reporting tool, you can pull down the results right away. You can make analytics. You can see graphs on your laptop. It's basically your measurement tool to look at what has been done during the day, and for you to do what you need to do to keep track of what needs to be done. It also can be exported to a third-party software company, which would help you look for more trends inside the hospital. Another thing we offer here is support services. On top of on-site installation and training, remote technical support and assistance, we offer ongoing education and training We know that there's there might be some turnover in the hospital and somebody needs to get trained. We're able to do that over virtual. If needed, we could do that in person. Obviously, the installation and operation qualifications, application support and technical service, and life cycle management. And basically, if a customer, let's say, has a fail and they need some further assistance and clarification on the fail, they can send us an email, and within 24 hours, we will do an analysis of the fail and let them know what we found in the sample within less than 24 hours. So that's an extra benefit that we offer as part of our support services. And that's it.
So back to the question earlier, Terry, on the different workflows. The workflow that we just went through is the workflow that would be utilized by pharmacy. So a pharmacy at the end, when they're actually able to see the result right then and there immediately. If it was where the end user or the provider was actually performing the test, it would, once the test was performed, it would just say basically, thank you very much, test complete.
Okay.
And then the pharmacy staff would go to the dashboard to see what the actual results are.
Okay. No, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So is that something that you can just kind of toggle back and forth if you have one machine in one
Yes.
place and one machine you set it? Okay. And I'm guessing it takes an administrator of some sort to switch that. They can't just get in and change that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right.
All right. I should have had a pen and paper to write down my questions, but some you answered with your summary. So you had mentioned it can scan the barcode. You're talking about
Yes.
the drug itself from the manufacturer, but then you also mentioned Codonics, which I'm thinking they have a barcode too, right?
They do.
Yes.
They actually, I have a sample right here, and I don't know if you can see it or not,
Yeah.
but well, there it is. There's
They're
a
lined
sample
up
of
just
fentanyl, but it's not actually fentanyl. It's not exactly fentanyl, but there it is. So we have the ability to scan that barcode, and and that information populates the prepare, the date, everything into that preparation ID field, and everything gets saved, which is
Okay.
really nice.
How does that work with if a hospital is ordering something from a different manufacturer that puts it in syringe for them versus the wholesaler where it comes, pre-done already? Does the pharmacy itself have to enter all of those scans in so you have a baseline, or do you keep a database, or how does that work?
So, Terry, so that work would be done on the back end with Codonics and the hospital. So if we're using the Codonics label per se, let's say. So when the Codonics label prints out, because what that prints out at the time of dispensing. So when they dispense out of the anesthesia workstation, a controlled substance, a label from Codonics will print out after they scan what the drug is. And then when they put that label on, all of the information that you just mentioned is going to be in the label from Codonics. Now, there are other systems out there, which is where we would be reading the barcode from. It would be the other system barcode. That's what we would be reading. And we parse certain parts of that barcode to put it into our system, into the fields that we need.
Okay. So like if I'm ordering from whatever wholesaler and I get the stuff that, most of my city is using, then the barcode is probably in the formulary. But what if I'm ordering syringes drawn up from another supplier that may not, how do you there could be potentially a lot of barcodes, right? If it's not Codonics and it's not a major brand from a manufacturer, how does that work? Who puts that formulary in?
It would come from when the pharmacy gets a new manufactured item in from a different manufacturer. That information would have to go into their system.
Okay.
And then that system transfers over to us.
Okay. And do you, you mentioned it parses it out. So I know that there are times when a barcode is if you're reading the whole thing, it's so specific and you need to, like, every new batch that comes in, you need to rescan something for it to recognize. How is Pharmacolog on that specificity? Does it only read a certain point that is pretty common in terms of just the drug and the strength, or is it very specific and you would find yourself putting them in?
No, you wouldn't have to put them in. So what we do is once we have the information from whichever system that the hospital is using, so those specific parts of the barcode are the ones that we pick out and put into
Okay.
the fields that we need.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because I've seen it like with PCA syringes or something. Every new batch that came into the pharmacy, the barcode was different. And it just became very laborious to put in there. I mean, not your system, but just to read it on the scanner, you know, for the automated dispensing machine. Okay. Let's see. What was the other question I had? Ooh. Shoot, it's gone. I should have written it down, and then I got too focused on my one question. So formulary wise, you said the person, they can enter and it goes down to the really small amounts for pediatrics. You haven't had any trouble with reading any pediatric concentrations?
No, not
So far, no.
whatsoever. No.
Okay. And who maintains the machine? I'm assuming it has to be cleaned or maintained in some way. Is that happen? You train the staff on site to take care of that, or how does that work?
We do, as part of the installation and training process. We do show the end customer how to take care of the machine. Now, part of the services contract, which is renewed on an annual basis, is some preventative maintenance. We do some remote diagnostics on an annual basis just to make sure everything is working properly. Other than that, there really is no major maintenance that needs to be performed.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's great to see these types of products because, you know, we all know that waste is an area that is easy for diversion. And of course, if somebody knows that you're watching, then they probably won't use waste as that method. So it's preventative, right? Because you know you're being watched. But then also it may force them in a different direction if they, you know, really are in a position where this is where they're getting their meds from, that it might be a little bit more obvious how they're doing it because it's, you know, we don't know what's in a syringe when it's being wasted. So it's so nice to see this part of the loop being closed because it is a really big gap. And to that point, I think it's great that it is a standalone, but also can be integrated with the software surveillance that a hospital may be fortunate enough to have so that their investigator can just look in one place and see all of that data. Are you hooked in any way with the automated dispensing machines? Or I guess if you're doing it in the pharmacy, it's completely different. But if you left it for the end user, put it for the end user to use, would they need to log on to the automated dispensing just so that there's a record of that waste and then go into Pharmacolog and do their thing? So they're going to two places. How does that work?
That would be the normal process, Terry. So they would still, because they still need to document that they're actually of the waste. So whatever method they're utilizing, if they do have an automated dispensing cabinet, they would go into that system to document the waste with a witness, obviously. And then the testing part of the assay part would be done in Pharmacolog.
Okay. Can it measure? Well, okay, you're just putting a small amount in the cuvette, so it doesn't. I was going to ask you if it can measure volume. In other words, if it's supposed to be 2.5 mLs that's being wasted, does it measure that? But no, because you're drawing a sample out and putting it in. So right now it's just measuring concentration, drug and concentration.
Correct.
Okay.
And
all right.
Since the fact that they have to put in the remaining volume is an indication, is a double check actually, because usually what pharmacy will do is when they empty out the waste container from the automated dispensing cabinet is they have a report of what should be in there.
Sure.
And they do a reconciliation of what's in there. And then at the time when they have to enter in our system, the remaining volume, they double check, does that match? If
Okay.
on the waste, they said they were wasting 0.5, and do I actually have 0.5? And they would enter in the 0.5 in our system.
Okay. Part of the manual process of that. Okay, great.
Which we're hoping to automate at some point.
Right.
With some of the automated dispensing companies. So we started with the analytical companies so we can send them our data. And next steps are, potentially to work with some of the automated dispensing cabinets.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Okay, great. Well, thank you for that demo. I know that last time when go ahead.
Sorry. No, Terry, I just wanted to say something real quickly, aside from, this machine helping for diversion as I discussed in one of the slides in the presentation. It also picks up error. I mean, if there's the wrong the wrong strength. So we've had customers that have found bags and syringes that have been unlabeled on the floor, and they're able to take it to this device and within a couple seconds find out what was in that bag or that syringe. And furthermore could be used as a teaching tool as well for pharmacy technicians. So there's much more value than just diversion with this device. It's really picking up other things beside what's happening in the syringe.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. So do you have any customers that use it specifically in the pharmacy for compounding, double checking, and quality assurance?
That would be our other device.
Oh, okay. All right. So your other device, is it by chance the DrugLog? We had talked about that before and it wasn't in the US. Oh, look at that. You are prepared. Okay, tell me about that. All right.
So yes, since we last spoke, DrugLog has gone through the FDA process and we now have it available on the market. And some of the applications for DrugLog, as you mentioned, Terry, in the pharmacy, and that will what it's being primarily used for is testing of compounds, whether it's hazardous, non-hazardous, whether they're manually prepared or whether they're done by robotics. And outside of chemo, just even batch filling, utilizing robotics or manual. Also for verification of the robotics that's in the pharmacy or after maintenance. So if a hardware maintenance upgrade happens or a software upgrade happens on the robotics, prior to it going into service, they would run a sample and then test it with our DrugLog system to verify that it's still working the way it should. So we again, since it's been gone through FDA, we've been going through and some of the reasons why DrugLog would be used. First off, it's part of the quality control process of the medication with in the pharmacy at the final check. So there are a lot of products out on the market that are great, that are quality assurance, that use the gravimetrics and the photographs, but it truly will not give you exactly what is in that compound. So primarily, again, it's going to reduce medication and errors before the medication actually leaves the pharmacy. It's going to reduce cost and increase ROI. Obviously, if we're sending out the right item, to the patient, there's no chance of a medication error, which if there is an adverse reaction, the patient's going to wind up staying in the hospital a lot longer, which obviously there's a lot of cost there. All the different types of compounding workflows that are out there, it fits into those very, very easily. And this is where we were talking about the training. Jeff, you had mentioned training and with the pharmacy technicians, and if they're manually compounding, it provides consistency. Each person, when they're manually compounding, there's going to be variations just within the person who's doing it. And how they were taught and how they actually do things. So this actually would provide some consistency in what's leaving the pharmacy, that what the pharmacy wants is actually how it's going out the door. It's affordable. It runs along again with Wastelog and how easy it is to use and the affordability factor there. Same technology, no different as far as the back end technology is the same as Wastelog. It just has a little bit of a different front end. And how we view things, how we display things, and how the customer uses it.
Okay. So what would be the, I could think of maybe one, but what would be the reason that you couldn't just use the Wastelog to check your quality control? Why would you need both?
There's several reasons. One, it depends on with Wastelog where that's being utilized. So if that's going to be utilized in procedure areas, well, the device is going to be there instead of in the
Sure.
pharmacy where obviously the compounding is happening. Also, the compounding is done. Compounding is in a sterile area where the drug log would actually be as well. So you don't want to be walking in there with controlled substances to actually perform your waste log testing, and you don't want to take the drug log out of the the sterile out of the sterile area to perform that. So there's various reasons why, and they're set up differently software wise as well. Because again, one is for waste screening, where the other is for verification of the product prior to it going to a patient.
It sounds like there's a little bit of overlap, but if you need your machines in more than one place, and certainly if you're going to go with outside of the controlled substance and the hazardous piece, then it makes sense to have a separate one. And rather than putting, could you use a waste log if you had it in your compounding room and it was sterile? Would it theoretically do the same thing? Okay. All right.
It would. You would just need to create the calibrations for whatever it is you were going to test.
All those drugs.
In order to perform it. So in a pinch, you could use waste log to perform what DrugLog does if you needed it to.
Okay.
And then getting back to your other question, that's one of the other differences between the two is, waste log, we're testing more or less to make sure the drug is there, right? We're testing for fentanyl. Is fentanyl there? Okay, there's no diversion here. Mm-hmm. With DrugLog, it's definitely more, there's a lot more calibrations that go into it because we want it to be as precise as possible because this is going to a patient, prior to going to a patient. So there's a lot more work with the calibrations and the drug libraries on the DrugLog side versus the waste log side.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, I know in at least some states, the California being the one I'm the most familiar with, you are required to send out, or you are required to sample for quality control. And everywhere I've worked, it's usually a send out because the lab just isn't set to do it. And these types of products were not available. Would DrugLog meet that requirement? Do you know? I don't know if there's a specific technology requirement or what have you for who you use.
It does. Now it would meet the requirement for the efficacy. Now it just depends on California law. I'm not exactly 100% up on the California law and what the requirements are. The only thing that we wouldn't be able to test is sterility. That's the only thing we wouldn't be able to test.
Okay, which I'm sure that's part of it. Okay, all right. I was thinking, that might be your ROI right there, is if they don't have to do their send out anymore.
Well, yeah, that's one of them. That actually is one of them. And in talking to some of the other, in talking to some directors about this, they are able to do sterility testing in-house. They're not able to do the efficacy part, which is where we come in. So I think ultimately it would eliminate the sending out to a third-party lab.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Good point. Okay. All right. I think that wraps it up unless either one of you has anything additional to add. Thank you for the demo. I think it makes it a little bit clearer for people that are considering, closing that gap with the waste, is just to see what they're looking at and how it would work. So I thank you for that. Do you have anything more you want to add before we close it up?
Not that I can think of.
No.
Yeah, not that I can think of. No, I really appreciate your time, Terry, and thanks again for having us back. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you to both of you.
All right.